We begin, though, with the ongoing legal battle over the future of abortion access and pills in the U.S.
The Supreme Court has extended nationwide access to the commonly used abortion pill mifepristone by 2 days. The justices now have until midnight tomorrow to issue a ruling. The case was brought before the court after the Justice Department appealed a Texas ruling to roll back federal approval of the abortion pill. The Biden administration condemned that ruling, calling the decision harmful and an unprecedented attack on the FDA. Vice President Kamala Harris had this to say.
If what's happening in this court is left to stand, it will in effect be a nationwide ban. One does not have to or need to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government should not be telling her what to do.
While the Supreme Court deadline is set for tomorrow, it is possible the justices could come to a decision later today.
So let's bring in Michelle Goodwin for more on this. She is the Chancellor Professor of Law at the University of California, Irvine, and a visiting Professor of Law at the Harvard Law School. Michelle, good morning. So first, just simply, what does this decision mean, and what are some possible outcomes here? How might those outcomes actually impact the future of abortion pills in the United States?
Well, it could mean that members of the Supreme Court are still deliberating. It could mean that there are dissenting opinions that are being written, and we wouldn't know whether it is the conservative branch of the court or it happens to be the liberals on the court that might be writing a dissent. We really don't know, and this deadline, as it's already been moved, could be moved again. But what this case does represent is something that is in conflict with the Dobbs decision, which left these matters to states to determine, and this particular petition seeking for this drug to be removed from the marketplace nationwide interferes at least with what was promised from the United States Supreme Court nearly a year ago.
And Michelle, does this extension tell us anything about what might be happening behind the scenes at the Supreme Court? Do the justices have to make a unanimous decision either to reverse the ruling or to uphold it?
No, they don't. And this was a particularly unique case. This is the first time ever that a judge has ruled that a drug approved by the Food and Drug Administration must be removed from the marketplace. There's been considerable deference to the FDA for nearly a century since it has existed. And these plaintiffs had 23 years, nearly 22 years, they brought it last year, to bring this case. And many say that this was a matter of form shopping, finding a judge that would deliver a decision such as this. That is a very strong speculation because Judge Kaczmarek himself had articulated before becoming a federal judge that he had anti-abortion viewpoints.
So, Michelle, does this current extension impact any ongoing legislation around abortion pills?
Well, it certainly could, and it's a flashpoint for any other drugs, and this is what's so concerning to drug manufacturers. Over 200 have signed a letter expressing their concern at this point, and that makes sense. We're right now in a period of COVID. There are many people who believe that COVID is a hoax and who believe that COVID vaccines should no longer be on the marketplace. There are people who are opposed to smallpox vaccines and much more. You can imagine those people after a ruling that could end, believing that they should, in fact, petition courts such that other drugs be removed from the marketplace if they have a moral opposition, a religious opposition, etc. And so this is a case that should be watched by all, not only those who are concerned about abortion rights.
Okay, we appreciate the breakdown, Michelle. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And the Massachusetts airman accused of leaking classified Pentagon documents waived a preliminary hearing yesterday. Attorneys for Jack Teixeira filed a motion to postpone his planned detention hearing in a Boston federal court. Meanwhile, in Washington, lawmakers received a classified briefing about the leak, leaving many of them even more frustrated. To dig in, we're joined by NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitali. Ali, good to see you. So we know yesterday's briefings were classified, so presumably it was very comprehensive. And yet, even still, it doesn't sound like lawmakers are satisfied with the answers they're getting, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't confuse comprehensive and classified. Just because they're behind closed doors does not mean that they're getting the answers that they want. And certainly that was the sense that our team got yesterday as we talked to lawmakers after these classified briefings. A lot of frustration, even in some cases some colorful language. But look, all of them agree that something like this should not have been able to happen. And that's sort of where this conversation turns next, if there will be any kinds of reforms around the way that classified documents are handled within the government and what Capitol Hill has to say about it.
And Allie, notably, frustrations around this leak have been bipartisan. Are there any talks on the Hill about reforming defense access or creating better screening for security clearances?
Yeah, those are certainly things that are being talked about, and it helps that it's bipartisan in nature in terms of the concern around these documents. But this is not the first time that we've seen lawmakers be concerned in bipartisan fashion about classified documents ending up where they shouldn't be. For the last year, Congress has been dealing in bipartisan fashion on the Senate side with trying to get better insight into the documents that were found at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, as well as at the homes of former Vice President Mike Pence and now President Joe Biden. Those are classified documents in a very different sense, but also where they should not have been. A lot of conversation on Capitol Hill about what that means in terms of what's classified, are things overclassified. That's a conversation that they've been having for the last year, and we still haven't seen anything come to legislative fruition. Now with this latest overture, it's again an open question, but at this point, they are still where they've been for a while when classified documents like this come into the news, which is frustrated and wanting more answers to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, the unity across the aisle really shows the significance of the issue. And Allie, while we have you, I do want to touch on the escalating showdown between Democrats and Republicans over America's ability to pay off its debt. Yesterday, we heard from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He outlined a new Republican proposal to raise the debt limit. Can you just take us through that plan and what you're hearing from Democrats on the other side?
Yeah, look, this is important because it's what we've been waiting for from Speaker McCarthy, who has been trying to go on offense a little bit, trying to demand that the Biden administration come back to the negotiating table. You'll remember, of course, that he met with President Biden at the White House several weeks ago in sort of the first meeting about this, but we haven't necessarily seen them do a second. McCarthy yesterday laying out some more of the milestones that his conference wants on this. A lot of it is a return to pre-pandemic spending, but importantly, it raises the debt limit, but not for a lengthy period of time. If Republicans, at least right now, get their way on this, this would become an issue right in the heat of the 2024 presidential race. That's something that's important to note. One, because politically that could be pretty tough. But two, it leads to the fact that this is not the clean debt ceiling hike that Democrats wanted. And if you listen to the way that President Joe Biden is talking about it, we're not hearing specifics there yet, but we are hearing what the downside of this could be once again. Watch.
The threat of defaulting on America's debt for the first time in 230 years. We've never, ever defaulted on the debt. And it will destroy this economy. And who do you think will hurt the most? You, hardworking people, the middle class, the neighborhoods I got raised in. Not the super wealthy or the powerful, but working folks.
And look, what the president is saying there is actually the thing that everyone I've talked to on this agrees on. It would be catastrophic, and it has never happened before that the U.S. would default on its debt. The open question is the differences between the two sides in how to deal with that.
A lot to watch there. Allie Vitale, we know you'll keep us honest. Thank you.
Deadly storms ripped through parts of the central U.S. last night, killing 2 people and injuring dozens of others. Oklahoma was hit especially hard. The small town of Cole, south of Oklahoma City, is in shambles this morning after a tornado was spotted over the town. The powerful storm destroyed homes and toppled trees and power lines. Hundreds of first responders have been searching for survivors. Here's one man's description of the damage left behind in the storm's wake.
It sounds cliche, but like a train. It really did. It just started shaking, and then the door was moving. You could hear just metal clang around like crazy. It was insane. Complete chaos. You know, we walked outside, trees everywhere. There's metal everywhere. Just everything's, just destroyed.
The National Weather Service also issued tornado and severe thunderstorm warnings in Iowa and Kansas, where a tornado also was reported to have touched down in Strong City, Kansas. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch is in Chicago with the latest. Jesse, good morning. This latest round of severe weather really devastated these rural towns in Oklahoma. Describe the scale of the destruction these towns are facing this morning.
Yeah, good morning. So we know that in Oklahoma there are thousands of people without power. You just played some eyewitness sound right there. Get a sense that these communities in some ways were unfortunately shredded, at least partially, by these reported twisters. We know that officials are reporting at least 2 people, unfortunately, also have died in Oklahoma, and obviously there are concerns about a death toll possibly climbing.
We know hundreds of first responders have been looking for survivors. What is the latest on their search efforts this morning?
Yeah, and we know that dozens of people are reported to have been injured. The search is frankly sounding like it is tedious because of where this happened and what happened. Here's part of what we've heard from officials.
The majority of the state of Oklahoma is in rural areas. These rural areas are spread out on dirt roads, on gravel roads, and it makes searching very tedious, meaning we have to go from place to place and walk up driveways and things like that to search these areas.
And obviously, we're first going to start getting daylight out there again soon, so you can imagine that this search efforts were also probably hampered by the darkness, you can imagine.
And quickly, Jesse, we know Kansas had at least 1 tornado reported to have touched down. What's the latest there?
Yeah, the latest we have is 3 reported twisters in Kansas in that state, and we're also looking at the potential for more severe weather. 27 million people under threats today into tonight across much of this country, guys.
Okay, Jesse, thank you so much.
And this morning, we're tracking the storms across the midsection of the country. So let's get a check at your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lassman joins us now with the latest. Good morning, Angie.
Morning, guys. Yeah, you heard Jesse just say there's more to come, and that's the story throughout the afternoon hours today. We've already seen some severe thunderstorm watches that were centered over parts of really Kansas and into Iowa. Those have since expired into the early morning hours, but we likely will see kind of a resurgence of this line of thunderstorms getting its act together and focusing more towards the south as we get into the afternoon hours. But here's where we're dealing with that current rain. You see a line of thunderstorms working through Kansas City. While we're not looking at severe weather in that area right now, still is going to be a mess for a morning commute. We have the snow falling in northern portions of Michigan, Minnesota. We have rain working through Green Bay, and we did have some rain working through Chicago. But when we talk about the severe weather, it's going to be a late afternoon into the evening hours, kind of the same timing as what we dealt with yesterday, and only moving a little farther to the east. Many of these locations are going to be places that we could see some large hail, some damaging wind gusts, and of course we can't rule out the isolated tornadoes. Yesterday's weather, we had many reports of large hail, up to 3 inches for hail. So yes, the tornadoes, a big factor yesterday and potentially could be today, but still the damaging wind gusts and the hail are what we're going to see the more likelihood of seeing through the afternoon hours. Dallas, Austin, Houston, Texarkana, Little Rock, and St. Louis all included in that higher risk area for us to see some of that developing into the later parts of today. The tennis ball size hail looks to be focused into portions of Texas, including, again, Austin, Waco, and Dallas. That's something we'll watch through the evening hours tonight. We also will see that severe threat shift just a little farther to the south and the east. Tomorrow, not quite as much as what we're expecting today, but still the wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour and large hail possible. But the good news is, as we get into your Friday, that tornado threat really diminishes a whole lot. Now, it's all thanks to this cold front that's on the move. It's going to move into the Mississippi Valley through the day today, and it is bringing snow to parts of the upper Midwest. Check out northern portions of Minnesota, where we're watching for, when it's all said and done, a couple of inches of snow in a lot of places, and the highest amounts could be up to a half an inch or even a foot for late April. Not great news there. Of course, as we get into Saturday, the rain starts to shift into the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and we'll see some soggy conditions. But it looks like the highest amounts that we'll pick up from this system are going to be focused towards the south and into places like Arkansas, Little Rock, Memphis, the areas that already have really saturated grounds. There's the highest snowfall amounts, again, into North Dakota and portions of northern Minnesota, so watch for that. Meanwhile, a much different story on the East Coast, where we could be talking about near record highs. Places like Washington, D.C., upper 80s later today, and by tomorrow, we'll be close to the 90s in a lot of spots. D.C., again, 90 degrees along with Richmond, so we've got it all. I feel like a broken record when I say that.
Night and day. You got 27 million people impacted by storms, and we're getting heat.
Spring. Transition.
Call it spring. Angie Lassman, thank you so much. And 3 people, including 2 teenagers, are facing murder charges in connection with last weekend's shooting at a Sweet 16 party in Alabama. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the latest as the investigation continues.
Not far from the bullet-riddled crime scene, authorities today announced the arrest of two teenage brothers, 17-year-old Tyrese McCullough and 16-year-old Travis McCullough, as well as a third man, 20-year-old Wilson Lamar Hill Jr. All will be charged as adults, facing 4 counts of reckless murder after gunfire tore through a Sweet 16 party in Alabama that left 32 injured.
We are absolutely still in the early stages of this investigation.
Releasing no motive for Saturday night's mass shooting inside a small dance hall in Dadeville, authorities say their investigation is complex. The 4 victims who died were all young adults, including high school senior Phil Dowdell, who lost his life in his sister's arms on the night she was celebrating her Sweet 16.
I'm glad that if they got someone, and but it still don't bring my son back to me. It's just something about just feeling in my heart that justice will be served.
There's an uncut cake and unburnt 16 candles that never got lit. Lexi's brother was one of the victims.
With authorities saying more charges are likely to follow, a bond hearing for the suspects must be held by Friday. It's unclear if any have attorneys. 2 teenage brothers and a 20-year-old arrested for murder, while families who were planning graduations now prepare for funerals. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
The white man suspected of shooting black teen Ralph Yarl after he accidentally rang the wrong doorbell entered a not guilty plea during his arraignment hearing yesterday. 84-year-old Andrew Lester is facing 2 felony counts, first-degree assault and armed criminal action. The next court date is set for June 1st. Yarl's family lawyer was present for the arraignment and called for a federal investigation into Lester's actions to file potential hate crime charges.
Turning now to some health news, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is now recommending a second dose of the updated COVID boosters for older adults and people with weakened immune systems. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now with the details. Good morning, Dr. Patel. So to put this in context, the recommendation is in line with the FDA, right, which authorized the additional dose on Tuesday. What exactly, though, are these new guidelines?
Yeah, big headline changes here is that if you're 65 and older or you have an immunocompromised condition, it is time to get a second updated booster shot. So this means that about 20% of people over the age of 65 as of today are eligible to get this updated booster shot. And that's a pretty big number, Zinkley. And then the other big takeaway is that if you never got a COVID shot, never got any of the original shots, those shots are no longer available. And going forward, there's just the recommendation for an unvaccinated person to get 1 shot, and that's the updated booster shot, and that's it.
I mean, Dr. Patel, that's such a helpful breakdown because at this point, there are so many COVID boosters, it can be confusing to know exactly what you need. So does this development mean that all people should expect to get annual boosters, sort of like we do with flu shots?
Yeah, it's pointing in that direction. Now, the CDC and the FDA did not make that direct recommendation, but by putting this more simplified schedule forward, that is, there are no more primary series or original shots that you have to get for adults. For children, it's a little more complicated. But for adults, yes, this means that it's simplified, it's 1 shot, and that it is looking like we will get a seasonal shot of some kind. But as of today, you can go online if you're 65 and older or have a chronic condition, and it's been 4 months since your last booster shot, you too can go ahead and get scheduled.
Awesome news. All right. So that leaves one question. Now that the CDC has signed off on the plan, when can people start scheduling their shots?
Yeah. So I went online this morning to check and see what pharmacies have. All the major pharmacies in the United States have already updated their websites to say that they no longer have those kind of original primary series of shots. There's just that updated booster, and they're open for scheduling as soon as tomorrow. So many people can go ahead and start scheduling today in anticipation of starting to receive those shots. And if you're wondering, did I get that updated booster? If you've had a shot since September of 2022, it is likely that you've had an updated booster, but double check your records just to make sure what kind of shot you've had.
Incredibly helpful. Dr. Patel, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.